No, Amazing Stories was really cool. God, it was so. I just remember I did one episode I did two episodes of that. One, it was called Remote Control Man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was really cool because the guy who played my dad was from he was one of the actors in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
The woman who played my mom was like the kind of bad guy gym teacher from Porky's.
Yeah.
And I like the dad used remote control to change people, and he changed me into Gary Coleman. So it was pretty weird, pretty psychedelic experience.
Sure, and it was directed by Bob Clark too, the guy who did Porky's.
Yeah, Bob Clark.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
right. Yeah, and Christmas Story. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was crazy. I got a letter from him. Like, do you remember he died a few years ago?
Yeah.
I got a letter from him that I had touched base with him, and we exchanged letters and stuff. And I got a letter from him the day before he died. It was sort of disturbing.
We're really saying what? Like, what did he say?
Oh well, we were just talking about movies, the movies he's made, and he sent me this nice letter about the movie he made in the '70s, the horror movie called Black Christmas.
Okay, how was it? Is it a good movie?
It's a great movie, but I mean they remade it, and it's a horrible remake, right? But the original's got like Margot Kidder and Keira Delay in it from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was made in Canada in the '70s. Just really disturbing. So yeah,
it's really tragic because Bob was a really nice guy and a great director. My God, Christmas Story, what a great movie!
Christmas Story, yeah, Christmas Story, Porky's. The list goes on and on. Absolutely. So I checked out the Goonies commentary today. I haven't seen that in quite a long time.
Cool.
One of the things that sort of struck me interesting was, in terms of the Goonies, I wanted to see if I get your perspective on this. Is, if you look at the Goonies from a structural standpoint, right, script-wise, it's sort of portrayed as like, Sean Astin is sort of like the lead character, right, because he's sort of, the story is sort of set around that character, but yet Chunk is very much a lead character in many respects because, we get so much story with him and you're cutting back and forth, juxtaposition between the stories. So, I mean, is that the way you kind of look at it too, looking at retrospect?
Well, I mean, look, the more appropriate title would have been Chunk and the Goonies. Let's be honest. I mean, or just lose the Goonies, right? Just Chunk. So I agree. Yeah, totally. I made that pitch to Dick Donner and Spielberg. They didn't listen.
They didn't take it yet.
Wasn't whatever. They're the smart guys, But I agree with you for sure.
And that's funny because one of the things I noticed too in the commentary, was paying attention to what you were saying, was just what wonderful sense of humor you have too. So I mean, is that something that goes back to? Where do you think your sense of humor comes from?
Well, I think when I was a kid, I grew up on watching the old Little Rascals and the Three Stooges and kind of the old Jerry Lewis movies, because I grew up in LA, and on Channel 5 out here they had this thing called the Family Film Festival.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a show that they would have Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and they'd play all these really cool old movies, and I would watch Spanky from the Little Rascals and say that's what I want to do.
Sure. So go ahead.
So a lot of what I did was kind of trying to bring that, just basically imitation, I want to do, just kind of broad physical comedy, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. So you're a big Jerry Lewis fan?
No, I'm not a huge, Jerry Lewis is fine. I'd say what remained for me was, I think the Little Rascals was just genius. To me that was the, just kind of being like, I want to be Spanky. I want to be like Spanky because he's like a little fat kid, but he's the boss, and, he's hilarious and human, So I just think I love that. I love Little Rascals because it was made during the Great Depression when everybody was bummed out and they could spend a nickel and go to the movies and laugh. I thought that was great. And it made me happy too, to watch them.
So do you think you consciously knew you were sort of, paying tribute to those guys with the Chunk character? No,
I think it was more just taking elements of different types of old comedy that I had seen. And again, that would be whether it's Little Rascals or Abbott and Costello or Three Stooges or Jerry Lewis. I would just watch so much of that. I would just take little jokes and kind of file them away.
Interesting. Because when you go back and watch your performances, Chunk, it's so damn impressive too. Considering, how old are you at the time?
I was 10.
God, but you've got this amazing timing, right? the stuff you're doing in that movie is just incredible. Just in terms of the delivery and like there's that great scene where I think you're tied to a chair and Joey Pants is sitting there, Robert Davi's sitting there, and you're crying, and you've got just this great delivery. So I mean, how do you think you? I mean, I'm real conscious of that. Like, what's kind of going through your head as you're working on that show? Like, I mean, how did you? I guess it's sort of a cliche, but I mean, how did you find Chunk? Right?
Well, basically, I mean, Chunk is basically, 80% of Goonies. Chunk is just really freaked out. You know
right.
what I mean? He's just freaked out. He's seeing, a car chase. They're going to stick his hand in the blender. He's locked up with a monster. So it's basically like, it's 80%, Chunk gets freaked out. And how do you get freaked out in a comedic way? And there's a lot of great examples of that, like, the Abbott and Costello films when it's, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein or
right.
Dracula, or like kind of how do how can you, lose your mind in a way that's, genuinely like the character is afraid, but it's still funny.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's just 80% of Chunk getting, child abuse against Chunk, and then 20% he gets to kind of save the day with Sloth.
And what was the? I mean, did you have to audition for the show? Like, I mean, how did you come to work on it?
Yeah. I initially, I had an agent. I grew up as a kid in San Fernando Valley, and I had been doing, little commercials and some sitcoms and things like that in the 80s. And my agent asked me to audition for Goonies, and I originally auditioned for Mouth.
Okay.
Because I had a big mouth, and I still do. But they were like, oh, you talk like a mouse, but you look like a Chunk. So then the casting director gave me, the lines for Chunk, and I took them home and came back the next day and tried out for Chunk.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, so as a kid, how did you decide that you were interested in exploring acting, if you will? Like, I mean, did you wake up one day and you decide I want to be like Spanky and Little Rascals, or I mean, was it something your parents?
Well, it was there was a particular game show which is no longer on, but it was called Child's Play.
Right.
And it was an old game show where basically kids would go on and they would ask a kid, like a 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old kid, to describe a word without saying the word. Mm-hmm. And then the adult would have to guess what word the kid was describing. So I basically, my mom sent them my picture for that, and then they interviewed me, and I started doing that. And that was my first thing. And after that, I got an agent, and then I started, going out and doing the rounds, and I did, a lot of the 80s sitcoms like Family Ties and Facts of Life,
right.
Webster, and all that kind of stuff, and then eventually got Goonies.
Huh. Okay. And then, so how do you, it seems like you, reading online, it seems like you sort of handled the fame or the notoriety so well post film, and especially with what has become the obvious iconic moment in the film for your character. But and I've talked to other child actors who haven't dealt with this so much. So how did you manage to sort of if you will triumph through that? What's your process like for that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mean? I just don't understand specifically.
Well, I guess I've talked to child actors who have sort of worried that their life was going to be defined by what they've done in their past life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like you've let that happen to you. So
look, it was no, and I appreciate. First, I really appreciate that. It's weird. Look, acting is the best gig. Let me be clear.
Right.
Acting is the best gig of all time. They feed you. People are nice to you. You get to travel. It's great. You know what I mean? Like, acting is the best gig, and I don't think anyone ever gives up acting intentionally. It's just too fun. But for me, I hit puberty and I looked different. And I went from kind of this chunky kid within a matter of a year or something to looking like teens look, or like 13-year-olds look. You look different. So I wanted to work. I just couldn't get jobs anymore, and it was really, really hard. And I was lost, because I didn't know what I wanted to, that's always what I wanted to do, and
Sure.
and I was like, but acting is, part of it is based on your looks, and if you look different, if you that can sometimes hurt your career. I got really lucky, like remarkably lucky, like thank my stars lucky, because the director of Goonies is a guy named Richard Donner.
Right.
And when my acting career fizzled out, Dick Donner, kind of took me under his wing, and he let me work for him, and I started working for him when I was in high school as a production assistant at his offices at Warner Brothers. And he showed me kind of a different side of show business. He's like, "No, Jeff," he's like, "acting is just one part of it. There's a whole other part of it. There's what producers do, there's what agents do, there's what lawyers do, there's what studio executives do. There's a whole different side of it." And fortunately, Dick, took me under his wing and showed me that aspect of it, and I fell in love with that aspect.
Interesting. So that's where the whole interest in becoming an attorney comes from?
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to, to still be able to be in show business. I went to Berkeley undergraduate and, tried a bunch of things. I was, student body president, and I was, a mic man, and, played rugby and did all kinds of stuff. But then, when it came to graduate, I didn't know precisely what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to do something in show business. So I decided to get a law degree, and I went to law school at UCLA. Because a lot of executives in entertainment, even if they're not lawyers, had law degrees.
Sure.
A lot of people that I respected in entertainment, whether they're, producers or agents or managers or, executives, had this background in law. And I wasn't sure what the correlation was, but I was somewhat interested in that, and I was always interested in politics. A lot of politicians had a, background in law as well. So okay. I went to UCLA, and Dick helped me get my first job in entertainment law, working over at Universal Studios Television, and kind of learned the business aspect of it. And then when I graduated from law school in 2000, I graduated from law school in 2000, and then in 2002 I started my own law firm with a colleague of mine from Universal Studios, and I just wanted to start my own entertainment law firm, and we've been around for, coming on 11 years now, and it's great. I love it.
Awesome. But I mean, is there a part that, I mean, do you miss acting?
Sure, of course. Of course. I love acting. I mean, acting was a blast. And sure, I miss it. It's a great, it's a great way to, it's a great method of artistic expression. That being said, I think once you're on the business side of it, the notion of going back to the other side of it seems, unpalatable.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that there's the nice thing about being an entertainment lawyer is I don't have to audition and I still get to go to the parties. So for me, kind of the best of both worlds. So I miss it, but I love being an entertainment lawyer, and and I love helping my clients, do their thing.
Interesting, yeah. So, I mean, I feel sort of like I feel like a dick asking, but so I mean, can we talk about the Truffle Shuffle? Because
sure,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure you've been asked forever about it, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't asking you. So, I mean,
the cost of being a cultural icon is great, man.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. I mean, how does it make you feel that image has sort of become an iconic image now? I mean,
well, it's funny. Like? There's a band. I'm such a nerd. I'm kind of out of the loop, but there's a band called that I guess is pretty popular called Chunk No Captain Chunk. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, look them up on Facebook. They have they're pretty out there. I think it's Chunk, No Captain Chunk, and they're like a pretty popular band. I love it, man. I get a kick out of it. I think 10-year-old Jeff would would really get a kick out of the fact that there are people walking around with T-shirts of him. On it. It's funny. Basically, after Goonies, and I was just in high school or whatever, everyone would bug me to do the Truffle Shuffle, and I would say no way, I'd never do it. And then I was a mic man at Berkeley, which is basically a cheerleader, and at football games, the first time I got up at the student section in the football game to lead the cheers. And it's a big stadium. It's the student section's 10,000, the stadium's over 50,000. The kind of the drunkest frat guy in the last row started yelling out at the top of his lungs, "Truffle Shuffle, Truffle Shuffle." And then it kind of filtered out to the entire crowd, where the entire crowd, the student section, 10,000 kids were going, "Truffle, shuffle, and then the band, a full marching band, the drum corps would pound the drum, beating, truffle, shuffle. So I raised my, and I knew at that point, even though I hadn't done the truffle shuffle, in about 8 years, that if I didn't do it, I'd, probably get, beaten up or something. So I raised my hands over the crowd.